We have people that aren't here, and obviously they're going to want to know what our priorities are, et cetera. We have what we're looking for is for people to looking forward to see members nominate themselves as board members, and that's a priority. I guess we have until September 24th for people to come forward and put themselves up for as potential board members.
Which is 10 days from now. So
yeah, August 24th.
August 24th.
And what is the deadline for the IOBs that they might want to propose?
We were saying the 15th of September would be the deadline is what we came up with. Now, I don't know when that channel's still not released, I think, Ian. Did we release it?
Yeah, it's all drafted up, just waiting for, whenever the committee says to make it live, can open it up to the members on Discord.
I think we're hoping to do that on Monday. I think it's Wednesday now. Well, let's see. IOB deadline is September 15th, so we do have some time. I don't know, Steve. Do we want to do wait till the meeting tomorrow to do that, or should we tell Ian?
To send out the details for the process of nomination to members? Is that what you're referring to?
Just open the channel so that, and then
I'd open the channel after this meeting.
Oh, sure. Okay,
no reason not to.
All right, this is the IOB channel. The nominations are going through this the nominating committee, and interested parties are just sending an email to that nom-cmte@gov RChain co-op email. So the process is different for if you want to submit an IOB, you do so through the Discord channel, which I'll open up in just a couple minutes. And if you're interested in self-nomination to be on the board, then you send an email to that address, the nom-cmte@gov.rchain.coop.
And so, Ian, and then once we receive that, then we send them the template that they need to fill out.
Yeah, so once the email is received, then straight away we send off a form for them to fill out, and that's the director qualification form. It just asks for contact information and to upload a resume and a couple short questions. Yeah.
So Ian, I think it may be a good idea to kind of emphasize that in the IOB channel, that is not a channel for nominations, so that people are not confused, I think.
Okay, let me just open it up now. It's called Items of Business 2019. And sorry, just a minute. Remember. Okay, that should be visible now.
And Ian, are there instructions there for them? Okay, here's how you need to fill out and propose your IOB.
Yeah. So the first post is a template, and Steve, if you want to make any kind of changes to the template, how these IOBs should look, then I could modify this this first post.
What are you trying to share your screen in? If so, we're not seeing it. No.
No, I mean, okay. Any member has access to that channel now. I can share my screen. If you'd like. That's
fine. Never mind. We can look in Discord. Yeah.
Okay. But in our last governance meeting, there was some idea that the template for IOB proposals could be refined. This is basically the same template as last year that's posted in the channel which was just opened. Can anyone confirm that they can see that that posting now? Items of business channel?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Okay, good.
So question for you on that straight away. So where it says 33% of the directors then in office,
Yeah.
does that refer to essentially the board of directors?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm looking for the 33%. You're looking in the bylaws?
I think it's bylaws.md-items-of-business, 5 items of business, and number 2.
Right. That's the most current bylaws that we have posted up on GitHub.
Okay.
So that's our rule book for how to conduct the item of business and the get things onto the ballot. And in the last governance meeting, we agreed that Gary would be the admin of this channel on Discord, the Items of Business 2019.
At some point, I'm going to suggest that we're going to have some kind of information about what the process is going to be then in handling the IOBs, so that people know, okay, I submitted my IOB, now what's going to happen next, and what are the milestones for that?
Right. Well, last year, if you look at the archive of Items of Business 2018, you can see that items of business were submitted in the channel. The admin would take any properly submitted IOB and pin it to the channel so it could be more easily accessed. And then members would show a thumbs up or some commentary. So you could discuss the IOBs in the channel. You can make comments in the linked document containing the more complete text of the IOB, and you could show sentiment for the IOB in Discord by putting a thumb up emoji on the pinned post for that IOB.
And then the board would consider the pinned items.
Right. So the board would see the pinned items and also the sentiment. You know, how many of, which got the most thumbs up by the members, and use that in determining, the 1/3 of the board voting to ballot that IOB.
Have you just a question about the nominations, Ian? Have you had many nominations in already?
Yeah, there have been 3 self-nominations so far, and 1 form submission.
Oh, well, that's 4 now then.
No, it's still 3. Two of the nominees haven't submitted their qualification form yet.
Oh, right. I've still got to do that. I've sent the email.
Actually, Steve, you don't need to. As an interim board member, you're going to be put on the ballot unless you decline to run.
I'm not declining. I've just sent an email requesting self-nomination.
Okay, but there's no need for self-nomination. So the same with the other interim board members, so Eric Meng, Dimworm, and
Right.
Sorry?
he said, yeah, you were mentioning Eric Meng, and the other one is Evan Jensen, I think, right?
Right. So Evan is running unless he says otherwise.
So far, including the current board members, we have a total of 6 nominations.
Well, so Greg's term ends next year, so he's not. I mean, he's already set. He won't be on the ballot.
No. I'm saying. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I misspoke. No, actually, I did not. So I'm saying there are 3 existing board members: Eric Mang, Steve, and Evan Jensen. And
those are all 3 up for re-election. Yes.
Correct. And then additionally, we have the 3 self-nominated members from the community. So total of 6 nominations so far.
Right, but the 3 that have come into the nominating committee, they haven't been processed by the nominating committee, so they have to be vetted and screened, and then those names and that whole packet will be sent up to the board, and then the board decides who of them will be balloted.
Right. So basically, you're saying it's 3 plus N is what the ballot would look like right now. N could be 0 to 3.
Yes. So the minimum number of board members in order to, what the bylaws asks for is a minimum of 3 board members for the co-op, and Greg's ideal number is 9. So I'm assuming that the board will try to staff up, a full 9 director seats for this October 24 election. But it could be less if they find that that there aren't enough nominees that fulfill all their requirements. Then they could ballot fewer nominees and just end up with fewer board members, because the bylaws just require 3 board members.
Ian, is there anything in there about if we end up with an even number?
I don't think so. In other boards, sometimes they put give the president some extra vote as a tiebreaker. But not that I recall in our bylaws anything about what to do about an even number.
How would you guys feel? I mean, it's a members' forum, so it'd be an interesting place to talk about it. How would you feel about somebody other than the president chairing the board? As happens in many organizations.
We could even, for some, in the past, we've had some board meetings were led by other directors besides the president.
I mean, it's more a formal thing because, largely speaking, I mean, the role of the chair is to facilitate a decision. That's really the role of the chair.
Right.
But because a lot of decisions are about, the fundamental workings of the co-op and the technology, it could be said that that's a tricky position for a president and CEO to be in. And it would be better if the RChain as a cooperative would be better served if there was a chair or a rotating chair in which one of the responsibilities of the chair, apart from essentially facilitating some sort of consensus so that things can move, is also to ensure the agenda. So more often than not, one of the things that the chair gets to do is to make a decision on what comes to the meeting, whether that's under any other business or whether that's the agenda that should be published, which of course should be published well in advance of the meeting so that the members can see.
That's mostly fallen on the secretary to make sure that the invitations and the agenda are sent out. I've been in other co-ops where there's even been a co-op parliamentarian, someone who sees to the order and the procedures to be followed in the annual meeting as well.
We would have to change the bylaws, though, correct, in order to make this change? Because I think our bylaws state that the president does serve as the chair.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect a resolution. I just wanted to stick it out there as a thought. And it might be something that we would want the governance committee, for instance, to look at and deliberate upon, and then inform us of what they think as well as the governance committee. What would that mean to them? And then it may be that an item of business gets proposed as a result.
So, board member, the meetings so far have been attended by the board members, by the secretary, officers, and observers. And then there was a resolution last year that the board meetings should be attended by the VP of governance and by at least one observer from the governance committee.
Yeah, and we've had the observer from the governance committee a few times, I believe.
Right.
There just isn't a VP of governance.
Yeah, Steve, I don't know if you can turn your camera on. Certainly we get that.
Oh, it's purely bandwidth issues where I am. So that's kind of why I'm not. But you can see my face. Hang on a minute. I'll turn it on for a sec. Zoom.
I think that that certainly is a concern that has been expressed to me by board members leaving, that they thought that there should be a separate chair function. Whether it's true or not, I think there should be that flexibility. And I would certainly support the idea of having an item of business that would separate those functions, so that we would have the flexibility to do those, have a separate chairman of the board and president.
I mean, for me, it chimes with the notion of decentralization, that you're decentralizing these things on the one side. And I mean, I can see this as three sides. On the other side, you know, there has been a lot of antipathy expressed over the last, I don't know, 6 to 9 months. And separating out those two probably would be a good signal to the community at large. And thirdly, it mirrors a lot of other organisations where that's separate. So in the UK, it's unusual for the CEO to be the chairman of the board. It's usually a non-exec member of the board that chairs the board. And that allows the CEO and president, it allows them the luxury of not having to worry about running the board meeting, and allows them to participate more fully, because they're not having to juggle this notion of, oh, I'm chairing a board meeting, I need to help it reach a resolution.
And Steve, in
Which
those,
of course is in. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to. In those circumstances, is it not the case that the board is the entity that hires the CEO as well?
That's correct.
Can I also add to this that, you know, normally it's the board that sets direction, and then the executive committee is charged with the task of implementing that direction. So there's two totally different functions of both, right? So one is setting the strategy, the board, and then the other is doing the tactics needed to implement that strategy.
Or at least the board approves the strategy that the executive team has proposed.
I would actually, I hear what you're saying totally, but usually it's the board that has the right to dissolve the executive committee, not the other way around.
Right. No, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what tends to happen in practice is the executive members of the board tend to do the straw man for whatever that strategy is, because they're nearer to it. Are doing things day to day. And the board comes in and refines it. Now, they might find, in some cases, that they really don't like that strategy. And there might be a bun fight in the board meeting. And sometimes those bun fights lead to the removal of some of the executives by the board. But it would be a better separation, I think, of responsibilities by having this as, having it in this way. But I mean, I think this is just something that we should probably continue to discuss. Maybe we've done the discussion. People need to think about it, and maybe it can come back to the members' forum. And certainly, I think it would be one of the things that the governance committee would want to put on its backlog of things to look at. Now, based on what you guys think as the members, and as more members start to get a bit more motivated and turn up, the priority of that item can be adjusted according to the members' wishes. What I'd love to see in this AGM personally is I would love to see some really good proposals that have their heart in the right place, that are aligned to the aims and objectives of the co-op, and are seeking to ensure that the co-op can be better than it currently is. So it's those sort of even better if IOBs. And having some of those that the board actually would support, so 33% of the board members say, yeah, hey, let's go for that. It demonstrates back to the community that finally the mechanisms for governance are starting to work. They could always work better, but it would be a pretty good demonstration that we're serious about all this. And this particular item of who should be the chair of the board, or how we should do that, we could do it as a rotating chair. It seems to me to be, that might be a reasonable one to put forward in due course, maybe for this AGM.
There's also additional cost that goes with that. The directors, the chair of the board, and the chair of the committees are all compensated positions.
That might have to be the proviso.
No, I was just referring to the bylaws. The amount of compensation is set by the compensation committee, which is not currently active. The governance committee would have to staff that back up again.
But you can't double dip, right? If you're on the executive committee and getting paid a salary from the co-op, then you can't collect any compensation for your role on the board, correct?
Well, committee members are not compensated. At least the bylaws don't say anything about that. The bylaws specify the chairs of the standing committees, the board directors, and the chair of the board, if there is a separate chair. But as far as double dipping, the policy with the directors has been that the compensation is, I think, $60,000 a year, payable quarterly in ROC, minus whatever other compensation you might be paid by the co-op as a contractor or whatever.
So would that also include money that got paid if you were the head of a committee? So if you were the head of the governance committee, but also on the board, would your
that's me.
Right, would your compensation on the governance committee get subtracted from your compensation for the board?
I could check back to the wording from the compensation committee when Kenny was the head.
Yeah, so, I don't recall it specifying that sort of situation, so that may be something that we have to look at.
Yeah, I mean, I think any reasonable board member, I mean, I would never claim twice. I'd only claim it once. And if I'm doing something else that would normally be compensated, well, for me that just falls under the single compensation. What you have to be careful of is, depending on the amount of compensation, then you want to choose. If they're all the same, it doesn't matter. But if they're not, then you either want to say you probably want to say whichever is the larger.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds reasonable.
And I would certainly, if there was a need to tighten up the bylaws to encode that, along with, and that would be one to do that would go alongside this notion of a separate chair, potentially. So that's 2 items of business, and we've only been talking 30 minutes.
I did find the wording from the compensation committee about the director compensation. And that was 60,000 per year less any compensation as a result of employment or contract with the co-op payable in ROC. And then the compensation should be paid quarterly.
Right.
So that was back August 16th, 2018. Something else for the governance committee to discuss would be for the voting itself, what sort of technology or platform would be used. Whether we use like a $39 third-party voting website, whether we use the Govern NetVote procedure that was set up last year that was on a private Ethereum instance, or come up with something else.
I would say, given the time, that if as long as the coffers in the bank allow, I would repeat what we did last year.
Yeah, last year, well, since most of the work was already, I mean, we'd just basically be spinning up something that had already been coded. It would be less than last year, but it would still be quite a bit more expensive than if you were to do a vote on something like Lime Survey or SurveyMonkey or something like that. It's just that the other considerations are privacy and whether we want this thing on a blockchain. And also, I guess whether we want to continue working with these partners. Actually, they've gone and formed a cooperative. So Govern isn't around right now, but they've John Bowden and some others. They've formed a co-op called Forum.coop. And so I think if we were to go that route of repeating what we did last year's election, it would go through Forum Co-op.
And is that something that Forum does? Do we know, Ian?
Yeah, they're willing. I sent an email out and I copied all of the governance committee members, and they said they were interested, and we could have someone from Forum Co-op show up at tomorrow's governance committee meeting, and just give their take of what their proposal is, if that would help.
I think that would be great.
Okay, we'll see if John Bowden can make it.
Cool.
Also, John was recently working with Nick Maines on something.
Right.
So maybe he can tell us what they've been working on. It would be great to have Nick's help as well. So he's done a lot of work for the governance committee as well.
Absolutely.
So I guess one other thing would be the G001 proposal. There was mention that we might want to turn that into an item of business. Maybe negotiate some of the provisions in there so that it would be suitable or acceptable to the board.
Sure. Who would sponsor that IOB?
Can somebody just briefly summarize what that was about for those of us who forgot or don't know? Does anybody know what G001 was about?
I don't want to. I'd rather not commit myself. Basically, was rearranging the power structure of the co-op to some extent. And I don't remember exactly, but I know that my understanding is that both Nick and Dan felt that it was important, and I don't know if almost a condition of their involvement.
It was, so GP001 was member proposed topics of discussion. So it was a bit like the IOBs that we're doing for this annual meeting. So how members bring their proposals to the board or to the governance committee.
Can someone link to the GP001?
Sure.
I mean, in principle, it seems like a good idea, but I don't know, based on Jim's comment, what is there. That's, I guess, something to review. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I put it in the chat.
One thing I remember, if I recall, is the acronym RACI, R-A-C-I, which I think it was responsibility, accountability, consideration, and investigation. So depending on with you're an executive or a board member, depends on a particular proposal or item of business, how it affects you as far as if you're responsible, accountable, if it's up for your consideration or for investigation. So it kind of outlines the person's position and the RACI aspect, if I recall.
Well, the governance committee charter, which is referenced under scope and applicability, I believe that should be the same charter that was voted upon recently. And it may be that that needed to get adopted before this could go forward anyway.
Yeah, both the governance committee charter and this GP 001 were put forward to the board as proposed resolutions a few months ago. So that's where you see some of the old comments.
Mm. So I mean, I think, yeah, because there's an awful lot of work that went into this. I do remember this. I think we need to, you know, as members, those of us that are interested enough, need to read through this carefully, making any comments onto this document. And then if we all feel that this is actually worth lobbying the board to have this go forward to the AGM as an IOB, then so be it. We should do that. I'm scan reading it now. Now, there may be other people on here that know this document better than I, but a topic of discussion is a topic of discussion in what forum? Is it any body relevant to the topic? Is that what this is saying? That there's a mechanism, this is about a mechanism for raising a topic of discussion within the organizational mechanisms that define the RChain co-op. Is that other people's understanding?
Well, I'm reading that the topic of discussion is one that is deemed to be of board level significance and not already on the board agenda.
Right. Yes, that's kind of what I'm wondering. Yeah, well, it's you know, if I was rewriting this, the one thing that I would say under purpose is to make that very explicit.
Yeah, when you look under the section of purpose,
Yes.
and you know it's highlighting, you know, look, we're going to talk about important co-op decisions before they happen. It's really trying to, I think, drive to that and emphasize that. It's probably in light of, you know, things that were decided upon earlier this year or late last year, and saying, you know, we want to discuss these things before there's decisions made.
Yeah, so I'd tighten up the middle bullet point under purpose.
Yeah.
Right, and simply say, comma, including the board, including but not an exhaustive list. And in that list, I'd have the board, the governance committee, you know, the committees we know that already exist and are running, nominations committee. That's what I'd do to tighten it up so that it leaves no room for doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And personally, I do think that, and have always thought that, for the board to be effective at representing the membership, there needs to be a mechanism for that communication. And this is defining that mechanism. But it's actually, I believe, given that middle bullet point, it's a mechanism that can be used for any part of the co-op, not just the board. But I would make that explicit.
And Steve, I think that your point of reading through this very carefully is really important, particularly in light of, okay, this document, the governance committee document, the potential new IOB of kind of rearranging the chairman of the board's position and such, and just making sure that we have a certain level of fluidity of coordination, and that, you know, these groups and such do not get entangled and create obstacles for each other, but that
Yeah.
the groups can work together in a fluid manner, and it's very, logical. There's a fluidity of coordination is what I'm trying to emphasize, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks good. I mean, I'll just take the time to read through this, and I may well tighten up some of that language.
Yeah, I think you could probably. I guess most we have what provisions in here we can suggest changes or no. Yeah, we're suggesting change, or I'm suggesting in suggestion mode. So we can go ahead and suggest changes. And it sounds like that would be improvements.
I've typed the language up now. Anything else on the agenda today?
Nothing was put in the agenda before the meeting. Are there topics that anyone wants to bring to the
Well, I'll give you an update on some stuff that I've been doing. So some of you may already know that I've been working with RChain. Although it's kind of been put on the shelf, I've been doing it really because we need to generate transactions when mainnet goes live, and do it fairly quickly. So it's a means to an end. So I've been working with them to refine a pitch to address the concerns of the music industry from the grassroots up. And I've had loads of meetings now with Ned and Nora and Fabian, well, quite a few. And we kind of got a direction going, but we're all busy in our day jobs as well. So it's a bit slow sometimes. But we've kind of reached the conclusion that the thing that the music industry seems to be asking for when we ever send out emails to people we know, it is they want their ecosystem to have trust. There is no trust in their ecosystem. That's the biggest problem that they face as artists, as independent labels, sometimes as libraries, and other parties within the ecosystem. So I've been working with different people in the ecosystem. I met with a company called Sound Vault yesterday, who were really, really super interested, but have no money. I'm after ones with money so that we can find 100K to turn our song on again. We've lost the codec, so we need to do some stuff, and Ned's kind of quantified it to roughly about 100, maybe $150,000 to get it out the door MVP. And we're getting ever nearer to possibly building a wave or some momentum behind it. It's taking longer than I would wish, but it definitely, sorry for the pun, but it resonates with a lot of people. So I'm hopeful that something might come out of this. And one of the things that's been interesting, talking to Sound Vault, talking to Hospital Records, and Chris Goss, and a few other people in the music industry, is they really like the idea of RSong being a cooperative in and of itself. And so that the members at some point of RChain will have to decide what to do with this asset that we own, which is RSong, it's just sitting there doing nothing. For me, I would let it go into that co-op. Some people from RChain will want to join that co-op too, I'm sure, and have it use RChain as the platform, and get it going that way, all with external money, not touching the coffers of the RChain co-op. So that's some sort of news for you guys that you might not have known before. I'm expecting in the next month, roughly, to bring this to some sort of conclusion. So either we find that money, and it's clear that we can find that money, or we can't, in which case maybe the value proposition is all wrong.
I'll chime in and say, in a lot of the conversations that I've had regarding RSong and bringing money to the co-op, the primary obstacle that I'm regularly faced with is the negative press that exists out there against RChain. And until we are able to have some positive stories around RChain, I think that's going to be the moment where it'll be a lot easier to bring money to the platform. That's one. And number two, I think the brand name of RSong being a commercially viable brand name that we can build an internationally recognized platform for is going to be a challenge. And I think this has been something I've been beating this drum for many months, that there's a need to change the name of whatever.
Oh, let me tell you a story about that, because everyone over here in the UK that I've spoken to, usually on a phone, when I say RSong, they don't hear that word. They hear arsehole. I hope you heard that word.
As in our?
As in everyone has one.
Asshole.
Between your butt cheeks. Right? I'm not joking. I'm not joking. The amount of mirth I get in conversations, I had Chris Goss say, joke at me, we're thinking of changing the name to R Music if we can get it. Because the real name, he said, what's the real name? And I told him, and he just laughed, and he said to me, well, on the one hand, you could say that it could be a good name simply because everyone's got one.
It's also something that people will remember. Sometimes the bad names are memorable.
So,
right, marketing 101. Just make sure they remember you.
Yeah. I mean, your points about the toxicity around the brand name and its association with RChain is well taken. But one of the things I found in the deck, for instance, that was the deck that would be sent to artists, say join this wonderful collaboration and put your music on this platform. Although everything south of the first major slide was great, the first slide was techie speak. And if I'm a musician, other than Imogen Heap, I don't want to hear the techie speak at all. I just want to know, what does it do for me? And that is in the deck, but it's not at the front. And so I spent time front loading it and used those messages, which, I shared with Ned and Fabian and Nora, use those messages to talk about, imagine a world where you collectively own the platform for delivery of music and all the rest of it. And that kind of works. And I'll post it into the members forum just so you can see it.
Hey, so Steve, can I address something you said, which is, people you're talking to and they want to see a decentralized co-op music thing, not necessarily something owned. And so what I want to say is, RCat, which is the basis for RSong, is open source,
Yeah.
right? It's up on GitHub, and we know we've proven that somebody could take that and with just a little bit of maybe guidance from Kayvon or maybe one of the videos he's actually recorded, could pretty much get the framework, for a tech DevOps kind of person, could get this up and running in a couple days. And if people love the idea, now listen, of course I want people to come to the co-op and support the co-op, but if they like the messaging of what the capabilities are, they can actually start working on a solution built on top of RChain with what we've already put up in GitHub today.
Well, funnily enough, when I spoke to, if you look at soundvault.com, that's the company I spoke to. I spoke to the chief commercial officer and the CTO. Had an hour and a half talking with them. So they tried a blockchain experiment a year ago, which failed due to scalability issues. What a surprise. So I had a chat with them, and they're really interested in the RChain technology. And I did tell them precisely what you just said, Ned, that the source code is there. And although they don't have a budget right now, it's there. So if in a year's time they want to come back to it, then feel free to do so. We'll have a look at it now. So I've already pushed them in that direction. What they've come back to me, and this is the CTO and the COO, and the COO is the chair of Mahogany sessions. So if you've seen Sofa sessions on YouTube, there's also Mahogany sessions, and there's some pretty good musicians that play in those sessions. He's the chair of that as well. So what they've said to me is, if we can get that momentum, they're in. They don't have any money to spend on it right now, but they're in. They would be there as an active supporter, and they would join that co-op. And what they've asked is that we include them in the reviews of the script and the messaging that we're trying to put out there, so that they can help us achieve our aim, which is to raise this initial chunk of money so that finally, I'm going to call it our music now, our music can deliver some value back to RChain.
That's the hope. Hey guys, we have the community call in less than 40 seconds.
Yeah, I got to go. So
thanks everybody. Thanks Steve for all that information.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks, everybody.
Pleasure.
Hey, Arvin, thanks for joining.
Thanks.
We'll
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, see you soon, Arvin.
Bye.
Bye.